Hi, Steve.
Hey, Jim.
I am really excited about today's topic. I can't tell you this is I think really going to be a fun one for me.
Really? Why is that, Jim?
Well, I used to be a college professor, right? And even though I
Yeah.
haven't been in the classroom for probably about 8.5 years, I think I could nail this. So let me give this a shot here. So AM broadcast or amplitude modulation broadcasting is, of course, the precursor to frequency modulated broadcasting or FM as we know it. Now, this got its start in the early 1900s, right around 1900, with some experimentation in Europe by Reginald Fessenden, who had determined that you could carry sound waves on, essentially piggyback sound waves on the back of electromagnetic waves. But it wasn't until the 1920s, with the development of vacuum tubes, and their use really both in broadcasters, transmitters, and receivers, that the significance of this discovery really came to fruition.
I really thought we were just going to talk about records.
See, Steve, that was sort of the limitations of AM radio, as it were, and that really led to the more widespread use of FM radio with regards to music.
Oh, great.
Welcome once again to Two Guys Talking About Records, a vinyl community podcast where each week we two guys get together and yes, we will talk about records. My name's Jim. I'm a former college professor who used to teach this stuff, and I am a record store owner to boot now. Nowadays, I am.
And I'm Steve, a record collector. I was an adjunct college professor, but none of this kind of stuff.
It's always been amazing to me, and this is, I mean, I studied this going as far back really as the 80s when I did my bachelor's work in studying broadcasting and communications at Northern Michigan University, and we got to learn about the history of this. And this maintains to this day too. The whole idea of even capturing sound waves, let alone broadcasting them, has always been, it's mystifying to me. I can understand the concept, but I can't understand for a second how these guys in the 1900s, early 1900s, even thought that this stuff was possible. It boggles the mind.
That's just a hey, what if we do this? Yeah.
Um,
Isn't
I I am glad they did, though, because that gave us AM radio and the beauty that was the music of AM radio. Well, into the 50s and 60s, really, as music, I think music and radio really began to grow and evolve together. We're going to get into that AM gold today on the podcast. How's
yeah.
that sound?
That sounds absolutely that's my childhood, man.
There
So
we
great.
go. I'll spare you the technical stuff that goes through there, and the Guglielmo Marconis and the Fessendens, and
Yeah,
we want to
yeah,
get
yeah.
into TV too. I could start talking about Philo T because he's an idol of mine as well. So
No, I just we'll stick to records. So
stick to records. That's my area of expertise currently.
yes.
So before we get into the pickups this week, I had a strange occurrence here at the store yesterday. Not really strange, just it's a nice occurrence here.
Yeah.
We took that week off last week and got some much needed stuff done around the house, and then came back, and it was okay on Wednesday and Thursday when we opened, but Friday, yesterday, as of recording this on Saturday, but on Friday this week we got busy, and I was kind of hopping and running myself. Everybody that was coming in had been suffering from some vinyl withdrawals because they
Yeah.
haven't been around for a week. And mid-afternoon, I had a customer come in and said, "Hey, you've got an envelope leaning up against the door, and it's not the outside door. We've got kind of like an outside door and then an inside door that
Mhm.
we share with another business here." And so I went over and looked, and there was this envelope on the floor, leaning up against the wall right next to our door. And short of calling this up, let me just read this to you. It says, "To Radio Wasteland, two guys talking about records, as envisioned by cartoonist Robert Crumb," and then parentheses, "a long time ago." So open this up, and lo and behold, inside is a framed picture of a Robert Crumb work of two guys talking about records. Let me zoom in on this for just a second here. And you can kind of see that. And what it says is the one guy is saying, "Oh, hey, what do you know? Hot Liquor Blues by L. Watson." And the other guy says, "Oh, boy, that's a really great record." I'll mention this on our live, but thank you to whoever dropped this. Obviously, it's a customer, but a local fan of the podcast as well, dropping off this little frame. I'll find a spot for it and we'll get it up here in the store.
That's pretty cool.
I wonder, do you think that even looks a little like us?
It kind of does, though. Damn, I look old.
And damn, I look like I need to lose some weight, which I do. So, but thank you again to our anonymous. Yeah, I think they picked the day that we knew we'd be busy because they just kind of snuck in and set it by the
Oh,
door and then either
that
disappeared.
is
Maybe they
so
came
cool.
in. I don't even know. I've got some ideas on who it was, but I'll ask around.
Yeah, very nice.
All right, back to business. But as this is the Vinyl Community Podcast, where we like to talk about our recent pickups, interesting week on my end. Adding a few things to the collection. One new one, which you're going to laugh at me, but that's why we're here. But
I'm used to it, man.
how did you do this week, sir?
It was bad.
Oh no, oh
It
no.
was it was bad as in I'll never buy a house. I'll never have the money for it. I found a honey hole.
Uh-oh.
But we'll start with I got a few things. I'll show just some of what I picked up. I this is kind of but I did find Collective Soul's greatest hits. I love Collective Soul, but I like their hits. The other stuff's okay, but I like their hits. This has it all. It has what I want in life. So hey, I'm happy with it. Uh I have this book that I like. It's called The Knights of Fuzz. And this looks at garage rock, especially the 80s garage rock revival and into the 90s. And so I opened this up, and the very first item I read was Los Negativos. I mean, I bought the very first freaking entry. I go, oh, that sounds good. I wonder if I can get one of those. And it's a Los Negativos is a garage rock out of Spain, and Spain put out some fantastic garage rock. And so, yeah, oh well, there we go. I can't even read a book without buying a record. It's
How the bigger question is how many pages in are you?
well, I just open it up, man. I just open it up and I look up the very first thing. Oh, look at that. Okay, I'll spend. Well, I should try that.
Oh
It
my.
wasn't. It didn't break the bank, but
Yet.
yeah, yet. But the big. And this was huge. There was a store, a record store I'd gone down. It's called in Castle Rock. It's maybe 20 miles down south, and I did a store tour there 3 4 months ago. And when I was in there, this guy came in and he needed to sell his collection. And the owner knew him in that, and they were talking. It's just going through divorce or whatever. This is selling his records. And he goes, I got about 5,000. There's a lot of soundtracks, there's jazz, there's blues. And they were concerned. They go, well, man, we don't do well with soundtracks, jazz, and blues. I mean, that's just not our thing. And I didn't hear, and I've been meaning to go back there, and I hadn't. Just find out they bought the collection. Well, they did.
Oh,
One of the first ones is this. This is an original, first press in pristine condition. We're talking the vinyl is immaculate on this, and it was a third of the price on Discogs because they don't sell blues that well, and it's a very expensive album.
yeah.
And I got it for a song in there. I was just dumbfounded, and it's just beautiful. And I checked through, there's to make sure it was the very first, and they had a couple telltale signs, and it was all there. So this is a gorgeous copy of Muddy Waters. This came out in the mid '60s. Really good.
Congratulations. But you broke the rule because those guys that love fishing will do the same thing. You find a honey hole, you kind of hold that close to the chest for a while.
Yeah, I know, and I've already kind of given up the ghost on it. But there was that was day one. I have a couple of other things. Again, I'm not going to show you everything I picked up, But there was an album I saw there, and I kept thinking, is that a first press? Is that a first press? Art Blakey, Indestructible. Again, an early 60s album from Art Blakey. And Blue Note, there we go. This, um, Rudy Van Gelden mastered it, and it's in there. And the first press was the one that he mastered.
Oh,
And again, the price was just they don't sell it. It's higher end for them, and so it sits. And that's their concern. Generally the more common stuff they're going to go through Muddy Wolf and all that,
yep.
but the higher end they struggle. And it's I'd seen that go. I went and I studied it at home. I went back there then, later this week. It was still there. Looked in the dead wax, sure as heck. So yeah, picked up. And again, really good. This is a little bit more beat up along the side, but still in the original shrink.
Hmm.
And just gorgeous. Just gorgeous.
So this could be a dangerous stop for you now that they've got that 5,000 collection.
Yeah, because then they had Howlin' Wolf.
Oh
Now, this
man.
is an 84 repress. I had an 87 repress of this, but I haven't bought it back because it always goes for a lot of money. And even the represses of this album of Howlin' Wolf. But there it was at an extremely good price. And so I've been wanting this one back desperately. So, yeah, I grabbed that sucker and just loving this. Just again, I kept my original vinyl, but that was a later repress. This is an earlier one, it's more expensive. Now, this guy that had sold this collection, he was a huge Pink Floyd fan, but that stuff sold out. They put that stuff out on Record Store Day, blew out of there. He's a huge David Bowie fan, and I'm going to have a video to show all this David Bowie stuff, but bootlegs.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, this David Bowie, My Radio Sweetheart, Volume 1, Ziggy Stardust, live on the airwaves. And this one, David Bowie, Rare Singles. These actually sound good, Jim. You know how it goes. When you
Yep.
have those where they're taped on, the piece of paper taped onto the thing, you don't know what you're going to get. And
Yep.
I don't know pricing because obviously there's no price in Discogs, but the sound was good. Is it immaculate like those Pink Floyds you've been buying? Those bootlegs? No. But is it better than a lot of bootlegs I've heard from the 70s? You bet it is.
Yep.
And there was other bootlegs there from David Bowie. There were so many singles, 12 inches from David Bowie. It was incredible. There was some of the original albums, but he had a habit of autographing them. Not David Bowie, the
No,
guy
not
that
David. The guy that owned it.
so it's like, I wouldn't mind that, but I don't want an autograph on it.
Yep.
So, it wasn't like I know I can find them, but that is just a teaser. Bo,
Wow.
Did, Bo Diddley.
Uh-oh.
Oh, yeah. So, but we'll do that another day. All
Cool
right. So,
find.
yeah, it was a costly week, Jim,
Oh
but
my.
those are things you'll never find at a
True.
price.
You did.
What,
Congrats.
what about you?
Well, new. Go ahead. Here we go. Another release from They Might Be Giants.
Of course.
Of course. This is just came out on Friday, and it is it's a compilation of sorts. It's it's called it's the Spine Surfs, which was an EP of theirs, but this is the Spine Surfs alone, and it's a collection of rarities from 1998 through 2005. What's cool about this? It's on red vinyl for one, so that's very cool.
Yeah.
But what's really neat about this is it's got some cuts from They Might Be Giants that have not really been readily available on vinyl before. One of my favorite tunes from them is a song called Dr. Worm, and that was on essentially a live album that was called Severe Tire Damage. And it was a studio cut, but on that live album, they've collected that here, which is it's just such a cool song. That'll be in the I Will Find Dr. Worm, just as an excuse rather to put it on the Spotify playlist again for us. But It's also got the single version of Boss of Me, which They Might Be Giants had done for the older TV show Malcolm in the Middle. It was the theme song for that.
Oh,
And so that is on here as well. A lot of other cool stuff. Much like so many of They Might Be Giants albums, there's parts of this that just absolutely rock. And then there's others where they get a little bit, oh, they might be gianty, I guess is the best way to put that.
quirky.
Quirky. That's what we'll do. So pressed on 180 gram red translucent vinyl. It's a collection of stuff from, as I said, the Spine Surfs alone was an EP of theirs. Severe Tire Damage, which was the live. It's got the single from the Boss of Me single, stuff from a compilation, a Working Undercover EP, and other compilations. So I don't want to call it a greatest hits because it's a tough one for They Might Be Giants, but
Yeah.
still, it's a very cool addition to put in there. Through the store, and this was in some of the batches that I'm getting to from the far back, and I'd set these aside because they were a little too beat up really to put out in the store, and I'm still kind of holding to that. But I got a couple from the Kinks. Now, I've talked before on the podcast about my affinity for the 1980s Kinks. One of my favorite albums of all time um, is Word of Mouth comes through there from the 80s, but I don't have a lot of the older Kinks
Neither do I.
stuff. So I picked up a Kink size. I mean, this is their early stuff. So Kink size, this is a 1965 mono pressing, and the Kinks Kinkdom is also 65 mono as well. These things they float in the $60-$70 range in
Hmm.
excellent condition, but these are nowhere near that. And I played through them both, and they're noisy. They're a little scratchy. There's no skips. So I decided to kind of hold on to these for the time being, simply because I don't have any early Kinks, but also because they'd be a little tough to put out in their condition, and I don't really want to do that. But we'll see. I'll make my mind up on them. But um, stuff I haven't heard. Their version of Louie Louie on Kink Size is just it's very cool. It's not what you're used to because they mix it
Yeah.
up a little bit. You can actually understand a few of the lyrics, but Tired of Waiting for You is a great tune. All Day and All the Night is on here as well. Kingdom's got one of their other best ones. Who'll Be the Next in Line is such a cool song from them. So the Kinks, they're an interesting group for me because they're one of those that have been around really as long as the Stones, and just very little bit after the Beatles. They got their formation. They've kind of hung it together, and their sound has evolved and changed through the '60s, through the '70s, and through the '80s.
Mhm.
And I think one of those rare groups. You can say that the Who have done that as well, but the Who hasn't changed their sound, I think, as much as the Kinks have from that early stuff.
Sure.
But it's fun to do. And lastly, the pickup that just kind of flows very easily into our subject today. Got a copy of Band on the Run from McCartney and Wings. This one's got a lot of great childhood memories through it. It has the
Mhm.
poster with it as well, but it also has what I would consider to be an AM radio hit.
Yeah.
So, or a couple of them actually. So we'll get to that here in just a second. But as always, folks, please remember to check out the Spotify playlist, all of the stuff that we talk about in our pickups and some of the stuff that we're going to talk about in the show today. We'll put into a Spotify playlist so you can listen to the music that we two guys like to talk about. And it gives it a little bit more depth into the podcast, I do believe.
Exactly.
Okay, so back to the subject at hand, Steve. Did you want me to continue the technical lecture on the aspects of amplitude modulation broadcasting?
Well, considering we're trying to grow the channel, let's not just say we did.
Folks like it when we talk about records. If you'd like the full lecture, you can head over to no, don't do that. The idea of why would we call something that this? It's not really a subgenre of music, but it is kind of to say AM gold. And as much as I don't want to dive into the technicals a little deeper, there is a reason I think that AM radio is so synonymous with a certain type of music. When that type of broadcasting began, of course, in the 30s and 40s, you had a lot of spoken word, you had a lot of orchestration, but AM through the years, and now it's really known more as a talk radio format, and that has to do a lot with just I guess I don't want to get too far into it, but the quality of the carriage of the audio signal is not what you would get on FM, and that has to do with the technical delivery between the amplitude and the frequency modulation. That's the technical side of things. But we talked earlier about how music has evolved along with this technology. And once you started getting into the mid 60s, where the music got a little bit more in depth, it got a little more wide ranging on the spectrum, a little more experimentative, AM radio could not handle the quality of the music that was being created, the just the sheer range of the frequencies that were trying to be recreated with things like Pink Floyd and the like. AM really lent itself to light, short, poppy. How's that sound? Is that a good way to put it?
It's a very good way to put it, and that's the way it was, and if you waited maybe till 10, 11 o'clock at night, you could get longer you get broadcasts from other areas when the airwaves cleared up.
That had to do with ionosphere skip of the signal, but I'm getting technical again, I realize, on that. But it also had to do with the commercial nature, I think, of AM radio. That was the standalone, that was the standard. And as FM began to propagate, a lot of the stations that would come up at that time were not as heavy hitters on the commercial side. So they were able to play longer cuts from the like of Pink Floyd or King. They were able
Mhm.
to do album cuts. That's why you got those deep cut albums. I did work. I mean, I've worked FM radio, obviously, but I did work at an AM station up in the UP for quite some time, and it was a talk radio station. We carried sports, but again, that lent itself to it. But the same station under new owners, I went back at one point in the '90s, was playing classic rock. So it wasn't AM radio, but it was AM radio with classic rock being played, Van Halen and
Yeah.
Zeppelin and the like. So it was an oddity at that point in time, but we were in the '90s by then. But the notion of AM radio, let me call this up real quick here, Steve. There is an entire, in looking at Discogs, there is an entire series of records, not necessarily a label, but from the Time Life record label, there's a series called AM Gold. Most of these are on cassette and CD, even though they're picturing a record there, but that's just kind of a collection of these much older hits, if you will. And the idea, I think, also is that with AM radio music, AM gold, if we're going to refer to that today, a lot of these also tend to be one hit wonders. Not everything, mind you, but a lot of them tend to be what we would consider to be one hit wonders because they were able to hit quick, make it big on the radio with AM, and then they didn't really translate into the FM thing as rock started taking off in the 60s.
Yeah, it's so true with that. And the 70s is like this golden period when you think of AM radio.
Yep.
And and there was it, like myself, I grew up on AM because we didn't have FM radio. And so all I heard until I went to college was AM radio. And I'd heard about other groups like Led Zeppelin, like Pink Floyd. When my brother came back from his first year of college, he talked about these things. Otherwise, I really didn't have a clue about any of that. I knew what was on AM, and it was just, it brings back great memories for me.
It really it does go back. The '70s, I think, were the golden era, but it does go back a little bit further. Obviously, the
Yeah.
'50s, you've got your Elvis and
Hmm.
a lot of the older, well, Jerry Lee Lewis and Chuck Berry and the like, kicking through with that type of rock. But into the early '60s and mid '60s, you started getting a lot of these psych pop bands, and a few
Yeah.
of them, I think, in my collection, we've got something like from the Lemon Pipers, who hit big with Green Tambourine. The rest of this album is a little folk psych, but it's pretty cool nonetheless. But I would think that that's in there. This one, Harper's Bazaar and Feelin' Groovy, the 59th Street Bridge song, went on to become obviously a much bigger hit with Simon and Garfunkel. But these guys are the ones that they did kick it out, right? I'm thinking that was theirs. The Feelin' Groovy song was theirs to begin
Yeah.
with, if I remember right. So, and then finally, now the Harper's Bazaar, I'm grabbing some stuff out of the store inventory for this. I don't have a lot of these in my collection simply because of the one hit wonder and one song nature, but when you get raindrops
Mm.
keep falling on my head.
Yeah.
So those that really is kind of the stuff that I start off thinking about that.
Yeah, and when I think, I used to have, I would say, a massive collection of AM gold. If you're, I was always coming in buying that, and I loved it because it's, again, it's what I grew up with. You'd have that one song, and then the rest of the album sometimes felt like it was all filler. on there. And so when I redid my collection, I really cut it back. When I think 60s though, AM, it's Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass, man.
Yeah.
They were everywhere when I was a kid growing up, Tijuana Taxi, all of it. That's all you heard, it seemed like. And then you'd have like, the Fifth Dimension, Up, Up and Away, and different songs like that. Always kind of softer type rock music. But oh my God, Herb Alpert, he was just it was everywhere. And
And I've got two boxes of Herb Alpert in the TJB in the dollar room that will agree with you wholeheartedly.
yeah,
The only one that really ever sells is the whipped cream, but it's all there. But you're right. Um, the idea, though, that these tended to really kind of line up with one-hit wonders has always been kind of the sticking point for me in the collection. I know you said you had a lot of them. When
yeah,
the flood hit, you lost those. Those are just things that, per your new collecting rules, you're not going to replace. And per mine too, it's all
how do you
it's
do
all
it?
on it's all on digital. I've got a lot of these. I've got a lot of them, on playlists and on my iPod, my phone now, if you will, too. But space wise, you're right. I love the music, but I don't want to have it on vinyl simply for one song.
Yeah, yeah, and uh, it's just I think it's the change of our collecting habits, and we've
Yep.
talked about that before in kind of that shift. And I just took that one song, put it onto my iPhone, and there I have it. It was, I think, 74. My older brother got a clock radio for Christmas. And, because my parents kind of controlled our radio, and they played like channels had recipes and crap like that.
Yep.
So the day after Christmas, the clock radio came on for the first time in the morning. And the very first thing that came on was Ooga Chaka, Ooga, Ooga, Ooga Chaka. And it was like, what is this? It was Blue Swede. And that I was looking at, I don't have that one. That's one I should have, because that was the very first song I heard on AM radio, on the radio that we had in our bedroom. And it was like, it blew our minds.
Wow.
It was the most incredible thing in the whole wide world. But I just show this. This is it is CD. Yes, I understand it's not albums. This is a 7 box set from Rhino. Have a nice day. This is packed with AM radio gold. And I used to have dozens of CDs. There's like a 15 CD set. Have a nice day. And pure AM gold. And it was just lovely. But yeah, this has always been a love of my life, because that's my childhood.
Well, and the thing is too with compact discs, and I know we're getting a little sacrilegious here at the moment, but that for this purpose, I think is a little more. It's a little more reasonable for a collection because you can have what is that, a 6 or 7 disc set,
Seven, yeah,
7 disc
yeah,
set, and
hundred.
it takes up the space of a double LP essentially, and you've got that large amount of music that you're not gonna have it on vinyl.
Yeah, and yeah, there's some songs that really that I hear and makes me cringe. I go, oh yeah, that was an awful song. There it is. But yes, pretty
There
good.
is one exception. There's a few records in my personal collection that I think are going to be the exception to that rule, um, where I do have the full album for one or two songs simply because I think that song is just as good. I actually have two albums from the Trogs. We're going back into the '60s on
Yeah,
here too. Wild Thing, of course, it's overplayed and overkilled, but this is such, and the other Trogs album, it's just such great garage rock to
hmm,
have. And then the other one is going to be the exception on this is a reissue that I picked up from 96 of Question Mark and the Mysterians 96 Tears. I do have an original copy of each of theirs, but we talked about autographs. Bobby had autographed that for us a while back here at the store. But again, the garage rock side of things, not quite as poppy or as sappy as the 59th Street Bridge song or some of those other ones. Once you get away from the overkill on Wild Thing, there is some other great garage rock music. Same thing with 96 Tears.
and the Kingsman, Louie Louie.
Great one. Yeah, we mentioned the Kinks and their version, but yeah, the
Yeah,
Kingsman version is the one that was just everywhere. They're one of those groups I think that really tried to ride that one song a little bit too
Yeah,
much. But
yeah, and everyone kept doing it. One of my first ones here is First Class, and it had the song Beach Baby, which you talk about pure, pure AM gold is Beach Baby. It's the harmonies, it's Beach Boy like, and it's just an incredibly fun, happy, sunshiny song. And a lot of the cool AM songs were very sunshiny, and that was wonderful. Another one, I just bought a transistor little radio. This is back in the day with the 9-volt battery you put in there, and I strapped it onto my bicycle for my paper route. So I that way as I'm riding my bike, I got a radio going on here. Our car didn't even have a radio for the longest time. That was an expense. So I pull up to my very first house, and on the radio comes Brother Louie from the Stories. I forgot to deliver the paper to the freaking house because I was just so go, wow, this is neat. Instead of giving them their newspaper, I popped on, I rode down to the 5 and Dime to find the 45 of Brother Louie by the Stories. And so, yeah, they eventually they called our houses. Hey, we didn't get our newspaper.
what's
That's
going on
fine.
here?
Yeah, what's
Meanwhile,
going on?
Steve's jamming on the Schwinn.
Exactly. But I got my 45, man, and that blew me away.
Into the 70s, and that's where we're headed with a lot of this. These are some of my earliest memories of music that I could really call my own. Stuff, as you mentioned, not really kind of put out by not controlled by the parents through radios. My folks, my mother was classical, and I, being in middle school and high school band, it was jazz and some classical for me. And we grew up on a farm, so it was a lot of country music, that older country music, which I had no affinity for whatsoever at the time. But roundabout, and then this would have came out, 72, well, 73 is when this came out. Um, I mentioned Band on the Run from McCartney and Wings.
Mhm.
By this time, I'm coming into 8, 9 years old, and I'm sent away to summer camp. My folks sent me to a summer camp, and playing on the radio in the dorms of the summer camp in 73 was Band on the Run. And
Yeah.
I just distinctly remember hearing that kind of echoing through this larger dorm. You're getting that Band on the Run song and Jet,
Jet.
specifically those two coming through there. And it was a constant, whatever radio station they had on played it almost constantly through there. So that song was kind of stuck in my head, and I make that very synonymous with that early radio experience, listening to some stuff like there.
Yeah. I this
Fondly,
this
I should
one,
add.
yeah. England Dan and Jonathan Cody.
Yes, there you go.
I I pretty much wanted to throw pencils into my ears and it just destroyed my hearing every time they came on the radio. I could not stand this because this was that's really soft rock
Yep.
on here. I'd really love to see you tonight on this one. Nights are forever without you. Now, it's just great memories. No, though I had terrible jobs when I was listening. I was working in a meat in a meat market and just slicing and well, actually, I was doing the cleaning and they kept playing in the AM radio kept playing these guys. And oh, come on now. Um,
It's
but
probably a
now
good thing that you were working on the cleaning side, not holding the knives at that point.
yeah, it probably was because the Lord knows what would have happened. But I do have a love for that. And and here was another one. Oh Happy Day. Remember
Okay.
that? By the Edwin Hawkins singers. That thing was all over the radio also. And in our choirs, oh happy day, whether church or school, man, we're on oh happy day, and everyone's going, we're all clapping, and it was a crowd pleaser.
Yep. And that's, I think, what a lot of this music was. And I think I showed this one. I've got a couple more additions to this from the personal collection, and the rest is going to be some store stock that I don't have. But showed
Mhm.
this a couple of weeks ago, the Redbone, Lakova, and their song "Come and Get Your Love,"
Yeah.
made very, very popular through the Guardians of the Galaxy movie very recently. But Still a great song that really hit. And then one of the other ones, this is also in the personal collection. I think I've showed this before. It's a Dave Mason. We covered this kind of stuff under Guilty Pleasures. Let It Flow and We Just Disagree. Another one of those songs that was everywhere on the radio in the 70s on that.
Yeah. Well, when we go to the 70s, Delphonics. La La means I love you. Oh my God. I mean, the soul groups that came out, but they were with the harmonies. You had like the Delphonics, you had the Dells. Bet you by golly, wow, you're the one. It just everywhere. The stylistics, the best of the stylistics. We have Bet You by. Well, no, this one has Bet You by golly, wow. I sang the wrong song, man. I'm
Oops.
sorry. What you're going to see is what you're going to get was on this one. This had that breakup is makeup. You make me feel brand new. All over the radio. They kept playing this, and of course, the Spinners. Rubber Band Man really hit me hard when that one came out. But you also had, I'll Be Around, Mighty Love. It's just popular on AM radio. Even Nebraska was playing these, and at the time, most of them I hated because they're so slow and so syrupy. Now it's just you hear the harmonies, so man, that's good stuff.
A little bit on
But
the
the
soul
greatest
side with
hits
those too.
albums
Yeah.
for me, Jim. Yeah, greatest
Yeah.
hits takes care of it for me.
It does. Yeah. A little on the soulful side with those as well. Quick side note, completely off subject. That just reminded me the Electric Six do a great cover of Rubber Band Man as well. If you've not heard that, it's
I
a
am
phenomenal.
not.
It's
Okay.
I'll try to sneak that into the playlist if it's
All
out there,
right.
but it's a great version. But the sappiness, yeah, the sappiness is another way to go. I don't have these in my collection, and I got to admit too, I don't even have them on my iPod. I don't really need them, but you want to go sap? Let's go sap real quick. Um, AM Gold from Captain and Tennille.
I used to have that. I needed that.
Muskrat Love, baby. And I Honestly Love You from Olivia Newton-John. That was the very, I think, epitome of the sappiness that came through. But none more. Let's kick this one out here as well. The Starland Vocal Band.
Apologize to TC. I know you're listening or watching. I apologize, but that one just what the heck, the most X-rated thing, and we're giving it to kids.
And they snuck that in there. And it's a song about sneaking off for an afternoon quickie. And everybody on AM is like, oh, it's such a great song.
Hey, we're singing in the choir. Yay. Huh.
Yes, they snuck that one in on everybody, didn't they? But it's still, I don't know. Maybe it was because these were played so often. And the reason that I just added Band on the Run back into the collection could very well be. And I love it now. I love listening to that record now. But for the longest time, I just felt, yeah, it's overkill. I've heard this too often, and I don't want to dig into it. We talked about radio. There was a time that I worked on the FM side. I worked a top 40 radio station in the mid 80s. And to this day, I've got just horrible memories of things like Peter Cetera, The Glory of Love, Wang Chung,
Yeah.
Everybody Have Fun Tonight, just about any Madonna song from that era, because they were repeated so often. And the overkill kind of takes that thrill away from listening to the music a lot of times. But now, getting a little bit past that and having so much music at my fingertips now, I don't mind it. I don't
Yeah.
mind going back to that once in a while. I don't think, and sorry, TC, but I don't think I'm going to toss that on in the store, but it's there.
So the afternoon delight was not about going to get an ice cream cone.
You could read into that as provided that ice cream cone include meaningless sex in the back of a van somewhere.
AM Gold, man.
Oh, back to the Elton John here. There we go.
Elton John, yeah. I mean, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. I don't know if they played the bitches back so much on there, but this one, Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me. You would hear Elton John all over AM and FM radio.
Yep.
Obviously, he was one. Just you get the shorter versions generally on AM radio, the little 45.
That's an interesting point too, because there are, we do have a few 45s. I think we did talk about them a while back, that there are essentially radio edits of certain songs.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
FM could get away with it because they'd have that longer format. They could get through until not now, mind you, but until it became more commercially viable on FM, where you had to have those stop sets every so often to make sure you got a commercial break in. But songs like American Pie, Don McLean, both AM and FM, but on its own, it's what, a 6, 7 minute song. They had broken that sucker down into a shorter version for radio, the radio edits. Aqualung, same thing. I think was a version of that could be knocked down to a little more commercial friendly.
Which on a lot of reissues now they radio edit.
Yeah.
As they put these on there, they'll put the radio edit one on there, which is cool. I mean, I was buying 45s at the time because I was hearing all these things on AM radio and go out and buy the 45s. Couldn't afford the albums yet.
Very cool. But again, a lot of the memories flooding back with this type of music.
Yeah. Gordon Lightfoot was all over the place,
Yep.
Sundown.
Yep. That's speaking of the radio edit. That's one I was reaching for. Was the record? The Edmund Fitzgerald was also
Yes.
abbreviated for radio. But yeah, that's another good one. Just about any of the Gordon Lightfoot work, very friendly for the radio.
Parents were okay with that, even though they also like Starland Vocal Band. But so yeah, that was nice and safe. Or this guy had a couple. Jay Ferguson.
Yep, Jay Ferguson.
Yeah, Thunder Island and Shakedown Cruise. Shakedown Cruise wasn't as big. Thunder Island was all over the place on AM radio. And again, each one had a hit. I have them both, but I mean, I just overplayed. I mean, I couldn't get enough of either of those two songs. But after that, I don't know if Jay. I'm sure he made other albums, but not that I know of.
Now I'm trying to remember. He came from Spirit, right?
I think I was trying to remember that too. I couldn't remember what group he came from, but yes, he did come from another group.
We'll get corrected otherwise in the comments as I try to reach for that old trivia that was pushed out of the brain by something.
Yeah. What else you got in there?
That's really kind of it for me. I mean, again, most of this is going to be, as you mentioned, kind of stuck on my phone or on a playlist somewhere. Very, very little of what I would consider AM gold in the collection. I even dove to a couple of my various artist compilations that I've collected through there, like the Freedom Rock, but that doesn't fit the bill. That is more on the FM side of things.
Sure.
There's a lot of stuff that is on those types of KTEL compilations. Not that there's not KTEL compilations out there of AM gold stuff. I just don't have them.
Sure. Well, again, these two albums were AM and FM. Steve Miller
and the Eagles.
Everywhere. I mean, you couldn't escape that. Well, of course, that's the best selling was the record of all time or greatest hits or whatever. But I mean, you could not escape either of these groups, especially the Eagles on AM radio. But also they were both on FM. But a lot of great songs on there.
Yeah, and that time frame also is really the conversion point where AM radio started losing too much ground to FM radio. FM was getting a lot. The music was more tuned to what FM was able to deliver, fidelity wise, sound wise. AM kind of began, at least in my era in the '80s when I started working in it, it was relegating itself backwards to almost an oldies format or a talk format, sticking with the music that it came up with.
Yeah, by the '80s, actually, once I got into college and found out, there's FM radio. That was it. Except, I guess our car, my college car was a 55 Chevy, and the radio could only pick up AM. The 65 Chevy, same thing. So then we just put a boom box in there and played cassettes.
Just real quick side note to that now, too. Nowadays, there's been discussion among the big automakers of making radios themselves an option. And I think that they've backed off of that because of the outcry and the ability to reach people for free. But that was being bandied about, that a radio in a vehicle, AM and or FM, would be an optional thing to have. And I don't think that should or ever could. I don't think that should happen, to tell you the truth.
Yeah. Final two, just, as it went in, Pablo Cruz. Good old AM there, Worlds Away is on there, and I Go to Rio, Don't Want to Live Without You, and of course Casey and the Sunshine Band. Popular both on AM radio. As we got into disco era, we had to get into some of this stuff too.
It gets in there, and then you've also started, and this is a fairly newer term. I don't even know if we want to call it an actual genre yet or not, but the whole concept of yacht rock, it's
Yeah.
the subject of that documentary, and a lot of the folks that were integral in what is now being referred to as yacht rock don't like that term.
Hmm.
But that is kind of almost, in my opinion, an extension of the music of AM radio
Yeah.
to some extent.
I would totally agree with that. It fit the format. It was safe. It was something that all ages could listen to and enjoy, but especially moms and dads felt very safe, much better than Black Sabbath.
There you go.
So,
I'm looking forward to that Ozzy cover of Afternoon Delight. See what happens there.
yeah. Air Supply. There we go. Talk about AM gold.
I saw, and we're off subject again here, but I saw something pop through my Facebook feed the other day. I'm having some issues with Facebook of late. There's so much stuff that I'm not wanting to see, but I saw an ad, if you will, or a post from Air Supply announcing their 2025 concert, and it looked bizarre. One of them was all tattooed up. He looked like an old '80s hair metal band guy, and like, this is Air Supply, really? And it's like, the Air Supply is an oxygen tank at this point. But so
They had recently come to Midland a
they
couple
did,
years
yeah.
ago or something, and my wife,
I
"You wanna
know.
go?" I says, "No, I'd rather just get ran over by a car, honey." Uh, you know, that was one of those. I still cringe. TC, my apologies. But when they come on, though, I will admit there's sometimes some of those songs. Okay, I can handle this now, but
It's that real soft rock, and I don't know if you want to call Air Supply AM Gold. I think it was a little later because they're more late '70s, early '80s. So I think
yeah.
they really kicked it into gear. But regardless, I mean, it's still nostalgic music, fun music to go back to.
Mhm.
Sometimes it brings up great memories, and sometimes it's like, okay, I can live without that. But
Yeah.
regardless, I think it's a hole in my collection, but I don't think it's a hole that I necessarily need to fill with a great deal of full LPs.
Yeah. I agree. I again, compilations to me work the best with it, and I'd love to get maybe some of those back, but they even get a ton of fillers, real garbage in them. So
They do, and I think that this is where you get something like streaming or the stuff on my phone,
yeah.
the actual files on my phone. That fits the bill nicely when you want to listen to one of those once in a while.
Well, I'll be listening. It might be a movie, it might be a TV, and I'll hear one of those songs, and I just, oh, I need to throw that onto my phone.
There you go.
So you pop it in, but you kind of forgot about it. I don't have any Herb Alpert. I should probably get some Tijuana Brass on there, but yeah.
I'll take care of that with the next shipment your way.
Okay. You have the complete collection now.
Pretty much, pretty much. So, what do you folks think? Do you have some favorites from that era that could be considered AM gold? Do you think that they're that important enough that you want to have a full LP version with all the other stuff in your collection, or does that take up too much space? I love going back to this stuff from once in a while, but as I said, I don't think it's a necessity on a shelf.
Yeah, I totally agree. I used to, again, change of habits, change of space, change of focusing a collection instead of trying to get that. Buy a 45, I guess you could do, but I don't need it.
Oh, that's even tougher nowadays is to sell that 45. Is sit down 2 minutes later, out, get up, flip it over, and
Yeah,
enjoy. But I don't want to upset the 45 folks out there. But yeah, that's not where it's at either. But it's still fun to have.
yeah, yep, definitely so.
All right. Well, until next time, you folks have been watching and or listening to two guys talking about records. As always, Steve, it's a fun chat when we do this.
It always is. Even if someone goes off the rails on trying to explain AM radio while the rest of us take a little snooze, it's still always fun.
Are you saying that as a college professor that I was a little, I didn't go Bueller on you yet, did I? That was
Pretty
high
sure
school.
I would not have done well on that part of the test. Oh, what did you
Well,
say?
that's too bad because I meant to tell you afterwards there will be a quiz. So I'm going to send that to you afterwards, and you're going to need to match up Fessenden and okay.
Perfect. All
All
right.
right. You folks have a great week, and until next time, my name is Jim, and I own a record store.
And I'm Steve. I am a record collector.
Thanks again, folks.
Yep. Bye.